for the day to improve. Okay. This is the old farts. Today we're going to talk, or at least start talking, about now that we've
It's like regular at home.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I'll explain afterwards.
Okay.
now that the election has been decided, the Democrats control the Senate and the Republicans control the House. It's now time to try to figure out, what does that mean over the next 2 years? What can we expect to see in terms of things that are different, things that are accomplished, things that aren't accomplished, etc. So that's kind of at least the opening discussion that we're going to be going through. There's there are 4 of us, and somebody want to start off with what they think's going to happen?
Sure, I will.
Okay.
I would like to say we should see legislation that both the House and the Senate ran on. They said there was a problem with inflation. I expect legislation to reduce inflation. There was a problem with unemployment. I expect legislation to improve unemployment. Reduce gas prices. I expect legislation for that. That can both pass the House and the Senate and get signed by the president. Stabilize the housing market. Prices have been going up like crazy. I'd like to see legislation on that both all 3 can, the House, the Senate, and the president can sign. Stabilize the stock exchanges, because wild fluctuations in the stock exchange, and stabilize the national debt. That's what they ran on, as far as I know. And I'd like to see legislation that helps every one of those things.
What would be an example of the kind of legislation that would pick one of the issues?
Reduce inflation.
How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I can think of a number of ways of reducing inflation, but this is what what the supposed conservatives voted on and ran on. They were complaining about it, so they have to have a solution. I'm waiting for them to propose that solution.
Okay, so essentially what you're saying is
crime in the streets. I want to see the legislation that's going to help crime help get rid of crime in the streets.
Okay.
Because if that's what they were complaining about with the way the Democrats are running things, then they have to have the answers to those questions, right? Yes? No?
Well, in some case, and I'm trying to be even-handed, which is hard for me. So, in some cases, crime particularly, the Republicans, as a general rule, not every Republican by any means, said that the problem is that the Democrats' approach to solving crime is not to prosecute. They saying, for example, that letting criminals go without bail just puts them right back in the street. The Democrats, of course, say putting people in jail before they've been convicted for extended periods of time, in some cases multiple years, is not.
New York have been in jail for 10 years without
right. I was thinking, but that's just one case. There are many cases where people are in jail waiting for trial.
It's just like the January 6th people that are being fairly treated. But
well,
go on.
So I'll get to that in a second. The reason, what the proposal is, and my understanding of how this is being handled, is that if you're not locked up because you're a threat to the community or a threat to flee, either, then you can go about your life until such time as you actually go to trial and they decide, the jury decides whether in fact you're guilty or not. The January 6th people, by the way, relatively few of them have been incarcerated before trial because the judge, fairly or unfairly, I'm not in a position to say, but the judges said this person is either a flight risk or is a danger to the community. And I think that's a reasonable standard to say that you should be incarcerated if you don't have the money to put up bond for a nonviolent offense. I think it is a misuse of the judicial system and does nothing more than ruin the life of somebody who may conceivably be innocent. But that, again, I'm trying to be balanced, and as I pointed out before, I have trouble with that.
I don't want to spend all the time talking about January 6th, but the use of the word few, I think it's more than a few people that are currently locked up. Many of them who have not even over the period of time have even seen a lawyer of any sort. So it's this idea of them being a flight risk is very, very improbable on the vast majority of them. Whereas many of the ones that we're talking about on the criminals been arrested, whether it be in Philadelphia or New York or San Francisco, they're people that have committed crimes repeatedly over and over again, that have gotten out without bail very quickly. So, but let's not get, I don't think we should get hung up on this whole topic at this point.
Okay, well, it came up only because this was an example of legislation or repealing of legislation, as the case may be. But as I understand it, this is community by community. It is not a federal level issue where the Congress or the president, through executive power, has said we won't have bail anymore. Each community has that decision to make, and if so, it's not a question of what a congressman or a senator would have any meaningful influence over. So maybe we should try a different area where legislation might be useful.
I think it's critical that the Republicans do something very quickly. And I think I'm very hopeful that will be done. I would like to see things from the Inflation Reduction Act be stopped to begin with. I'd like to see drilling on the pipelines be reinstituted. I want to see the 85,000 IRS agents debunked. Right. Those are just a few of the things I want to see to start off happening. And I want to see the investigations take place. I think there was a discussions earlier today. I didn't get to see much of the telecast that spoke about it, but the whole thing from Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's involvement in corruption cases, that it appears to be very valid. Investigation about where did COVID-19 come from and why that's been covered up, in Dr. Fauci's involvement. What's going on with the FBI and the DOJ? There's somewhere between 15 and 20 FBI agents who have resigned or been fired, are all going to be coming forward as whistleblowers. So And then I think the House has to do an appropriation on the monies that's been allocated by the Democrats on the budget. I think they need to talk about the border and what can be done about that. And that's just a few of the things I think needs to be done.
Can I ask you a question on the ADA, the Inflation Reduction Act, for lack of a better term? What is it that you would like to see taken out?
See, I really can't tell you off the top of my head because I haven't really looked into it. All I know is that there's I came across 3 quick examples that were presented a few nights ago. One, I wish I had the notes in front of me, I can't remember. One was $25 million that was appropriated to a town in New Hampshire for heated sidewalks. I think that was in Dover, New Hampshire, but I'm not sure it was Dover, but it was somewhere in that area. Another one was $50 million was appropriated for a place in Phoenix, Arizona, for an island on some lake area that has less than 900 people, and they want to spend $50 million to build an electric ferry to replace the diesel ferry that they're presently using and have had no real serious problems with. And there's another example. I mean, those are kinds of things that I don't think need to be there.
That's inflation.
Are those specifically in the bill? Or
Well,
is that
I assume they're
local
part of
use
the,
of
I'm
money?
assuming they're part of the transportation infrastructure portion of that. But again, I don't know. I mean, I bet you very few of the Congress people have read what that there's thousands of pages. I think it's thousands of pages that this Inflation Reduction Act covers.
That's inflation reduction, or is it national debt? Or I mean,
Isn't that I thought the Inflation Reduction Act included stuff to do with road construction and bridges and so forth.
Yeah, I do know that it included that. I remember reading that. I hadn't read any of these things, but
isn't that the infrastructure bill?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you too well, Paul.
Is that not the infrastructure bill? It's not inflation, is it?
Inflation reduction? Well, I don't know for sure either. I haven't done any research on it. I was tempted to at one point, and the idea of trying to find this copy of this bill, all these pages, I just was overwhelming.
Yeah, infrastructure has to do with, roads, bridges, and that kind of thing, as opposed to inflation has to do with the rise in the cost of living.
Yeah, maybe the case, and that's where maybe where what I said about the drilling being put back into place to start getting these gas lines and fuel lines and oil lines back into place.
I can give you one factual thing, which whether in fact we need to drill more or have pipelines to transport whatever it is that we're drilling to the refineries, that's a separate question. I can tell you that when the oil was released from the strategic reserve, it was sent to Europe for one very, very significant reason. There was no refinery capacity in the US able to accept additional oil. So if we drill more without additional refinery capacity, we're not accomplishing what you want to accomplish. We may be reducing the worldwide price of oil without question, but it's not helping the United States specifically.
We need to build more refineries.
But
we haven't done that. I think the last one I heard was built was in the 70s. Maybe it was the 70s.
Let's use that as a working number because I don't know either. I know we haven't built any in a good while, but that's a private industry decision.
But private industry isn't going to do that if the government constantly is telling the oil industry that we want to put you out of business. So they're not going to invest millions and millions of dollars to build these refineries if that's the message you're getting.
And by the way, I agree with you. That's part of my understanding is that part of the calculus that the private industry said was, at least in the United States, if not throughout the world, even in China, the future is in renewables, not in oil. So a smart decision from the private industry is to not overexpand for something that in 10, 20, 30 years is going to be out of business. But how does legislation accomplish encouraging or requiring, as the case may be, these refineries in Houston and LA and various places to be expanded?
Let me let Colleen get in on some of this here.
Well, well, I mean, I was thinking that in order to get those companies to invest in something, you have to create an environment that will give them some I guess benefit for doing that. It is still a business, and if they're getting hit with like high tax rates and things like that, it's not really conducive to business. So when we lower the business tax rate, that's when businesses start to do better. They start hiring people, and it has this residual effect that like the economy gets better. People are working. They're not like getting in trouble as much. There's a whole lot of things that happen when that stuff happens. So you have to create an environment, and the government, instead of like putting the full weight of government on the backs of the American people, why don't they focus on creating an environment that businesses can flourish in, and then the people will be better. And if our government doesn't care about whether the people are better, then we have other problems. And I think, it's kind of important that they have to care about how we're doing. And if they don't, then this isn't going to change.
I agree that the function of government is to get the people better, a better environment, etc. I think we can all agree on that. The obvious question is the differences between various groups are, what does that entail?
I don't think it's a Democrat or a Republican thing. Everybody knows, the people that are in the finance committee, they know what needs to get done. The bankers, they're out to get their money, and they're, everybody knows what needs to get done. And it's not a Democrat or Republican thing. Everybody knows. And if you want to hide behind being a Democrat or a Republican so you don't make the right decisions or don't make decisions that will benefit the economy, then there's nothing much you can do about that if you're going to hide behind a party say, oh, I'm a Democrat, so I'm just going to spend. That's what people that aren't Democrats say. So if you don't feel that way, if you feel like that the government needs to pull back on some of this spending, then put aside your political bias and just allow the government to put the weight of, they have all the control they need because they got all of our money, and they can do whatever they need to do, but they don't do it because it doesn't benefit their party. They need to concentrate on what benefits the people.
Well,
I think.
Let me point something out.
Please.
I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I was just saying, give us a few examples of things that the government can do that will benefit the people.
Well, create the environment that's needed for businesses to do better. If businesses do better, small people start small businesses. So you have to reduce the rates of taxes that the government is charging on businesses. create an environment so that they can make money. Not, that's what they want to do. That's a business. But by them doing that business, it benefits people. So I think the biggest thing government can do is reduce the cost of them to do business and, bring, business back into this country, do whatever it takes to get that kind of thing going again. Our economy is hurting, and it really does just fall right on the government. They have all the weight that they need. They have the money because they get right into our paychecks every week, and they know what to do. They're not stupid people. So they should do things that make sense and help businesses get better so people get better.
Well,
I think creating the lowering the taxes on the businesses is probably the most effective thing a government can do with regards to what they have available for resources.
okay, I'm going to offer a suggestion, which I like to think that at least everybody in this group would get behind. And that is, if we believe that small business is the key to prosperity for the country, and obviously small business needs lower costs so that they can sell things at a competitive price. And one of the costs certainly is taxation. Of course, you have to have a profit before you get taxed, but taxation is a consideration. How would you feel if we had a graduated corporate tax in the same way as we have a graduated individual income tax, where the large companies, such as the big oil companies, which are declaring record profits right now, bigger than they've ever seen before, get charged more to allow the smaller companies, the companies just getting started, the companies that are running on a very narrow margin, to pay less or possibly not at all, depending upon on the graduation thing. In the case of the individual tax, a small, reasonable percentage of the US population pays no taxes because their income doesn't rise high enough to basically justify all the work involved. So would you accept the idea of a graduated tax where the small business pays less or not at all, and the bigger businesses pay more? Because the functions that are being paid for by taxation are necessary. Firemen, police, military, the FDA making sure that the medicine my wife just bought this afternoon is in fact A, not going to kill her, and B, going to be effective for why it was prescribed in the first place.
Well, I'll agree. I'd look at it, what you're proposing, but that's as far as I'd go at this point about considering it, because I think there's a lot more to it than I understand to be able to explain. But sure, we'll put that on the table as a consideration.
Okay. I mean, that's all we can do at this point. Obviously, none of us has a vote on a specific proposal, but
we have a vote by voting for the right people to be in office.
Right. Well, what I was going to say was,
unfortunately, in my opinion, I'm living in the wrong section of the country.
Chuck, I love you.
And if I was much younger, I would certainly consider moving to another part of the country than this New England states. And as much as I like New England, I don't think it's doing the right things. But
well, let's get back to
Paul had something he wanted to say earlier.
Yeah.
With respect to taxation, I think that what the country should do is, and I'm probably the first one that ever said this, is every company that's incorporated in the United States has to have an office through which it gets taxed. Everything that's sold, bought or sold in the United States has to be by a company, has to be done through that taxation center. So the gross profit of that corporation or company or, with is taxed. You don't get, mega corporations paying zero tax, because they're incorporated in the Cayman Islands. Now, there's a lot of those. They should be paying taxes.
Well,
And
actually, it's the accountants. It's all the accountants' fault.
No,
Hopefully, there's no accountant here. What happens is, if you do business in the United States, you are a U.S. corporation.
But
Citizens Bank is home office is somewhere else. I don't remember where. I used to know that, but there is a Citizens Bank USA, which is essentially what you were talking about, Paul. And they have their own accounting of business done within the United States. But if I, for example, am selling, turns out cookies I really love come from Turkey. They're chocolate marshmallow cookies. I love those things. And I just found out they come from Turkey. I'm going to hypothesize, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to hypothesize that they're made in Turkey, and the cost when they enter the United States is $1, and the transportation to get them to the store where I buy them is another 10 cents, and the store at which I buy them is 10 cents. So the profit, the U.S. profit, is a nickel. But in Turkey, they're produced for a dime. So all of the profit, the dime that costs in Turkey to make them, and they charge the corporation charges itself $1 when it reaches New York, where it is recorded as being the cost of the U.S. corporation. If you look at the pure numbers, the accounting numbers, this corporation makes almost no profit and pays no taxes. Everything's fine, but the parent corporation is making a huge profit, and it's purely accounting rules. And I don't know how you resolve that.
Well, I think you need to resolve it. I think you need to resolve it by getting the politicians to get their hands out of the making money the way they get whatever they're doing. I going into, because I don't know exactly, but I think the vast majority of these politicians, especially the ones that are in office at the federal level for years after years after years, have money themselves probably over the Cayman Islands or wherever it is, along with these corporations. And there should be some legislation that prevents them. This whole thing about Nancy Pelosi and her husband benefiting by some of these regulations that, my husband didn't know about buying all this stock ahead of time to do with chips or something or other the last month or two ago. That's a lot of baloney. They know what's going on, and they're taking benefit of all of this. They don't want to penalize these corporations for whatever they're doing, because they're going to get they're not going to be in a favorable status with these corporations anymore. So there needs to be a whole overhaul of so many of these things that are being done.
By the way, I agree with you that it needs to be an overhaul, and one of the issues, not the only one, back when the founders were writing the Constitution, the only people who got to vote were property owners. And it was assumed that if you went to the legislature to represent your district, you didn't need any money because you were wealthy. And so in theory, because you didn't need the money, you weren't susceptible to bribes. We know that there were bribes, but as a general rule, they weren't. But they changed the concept and they said, we don't want just the wealthy to be running the country. We want the everyday guy to be able to represent the Davy Crockett's of the world. I remember this was before Colleen's time, but Disney had a series on Davy Crockett, who was a backwoodsman who went to Congress, and I don't remember the details, but he was a poor man. And
I think we all know that story, Bob.
Okay, but the concept was everybody should have a right to be in there, and now you get to people where they're very susceptible to bribery of one form or another because they need the money.
I have to stop you because you say everybody involved. What about latest I'm aware of that? I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's a very high number, whether it's 30, 40 or whatever percentage of people. And I think Paul said something earlier. People who are below a certain income level don't pay any taxes. So they have no portion into the game at all, what's going on with taxes. So that's not right either. I'm not saying they should be taxed greatly, but they should have some skin in the game to some degree. That should be figured out how to do that.
Well, don't you think a flat tax? I'm in favor of flat tax. That way,
I'm right along with you, Colleen.
yeah, 10%, whatever the rate is going to be 10%. If you only make $100, it's $10 for you. You make $1 million, it's different for you. So it's not going to be a burden on anybody to do whatever whatever you're making. But I definitely don't agree with income credit and stuff. People that don't even work, they're just getting a government paycheck and they're getting refunds. I don't even get a refund. And I've been working a long time and I don't get a refund and stuff. Sometimes we have to pay, but it's just, I don't agree with that. If you don't work, but you get money from the government, that's not considered income that you should be like taking advantage of, because they're not getting taxes out of it. They're getting a refund off of it. Earned income tax credit. That's crazy talk. I don't know.
Well, actually, I managed an H&R Block office for a couple of years up in Billerica. The people who get the earned income tax credit are working. They're working and they're making less than, and I don't remember the numbers, and I'm sure they've changed over time. They're earning less than whatever the standard number should be. And so they're getting, instead of welfare, they're getting some money back, but they're working.
Why should the people that are paying taxes give somebody money? It's mainly like getting like a bonus in your paycheck. You know what I'm saying? It's like, right. So that it's supposed to be a tax on what you earned. And if you didn't earn anything, then you don't pay taxes on something you didn't earn. And you certainly don't get a bonus because you didn't earn enough. It's like, we got to stop this welfare state thing.
But that's
I don't want to fund somebody else's retirement. I want to fund my own. And if I keep getting my money taken out of my coffers to cover all the people that don't work enough to get anything, then I'm not ever going to get retired. It's like, it's crazy.
I hear what you're saying, but if you go back to the Clinton years when this actually happened, they got rid of the old welfare system, which was, you don't have any money, come in, we'll give you whatever you want. Not whatever you want, because I deal with people a lot who are on food stamps and other forms of, we'll call it welfare, for the better lack of better terms, and they would love to be able to have a job where they could make and live a little better than they're living. But back when they got rid of the welfare system, they said, okay, not everybody's going to make a living wage. We understand that, but we want them to work. So that's what the earned income tax credit was. It was saying, if you work, and you don't make enough for whatever reason, we will help you a little bit. And that's what it was. So what you're saying is exactly what the earned income tax credit is all about.
I think Paul was trying to say something earlier, Bob.
Okay.
You know, Paul's mic is really quiet. I'm having a hard time hearing.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time
I'll
too.
get a little closer then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
Talk
little better.
about money back. I receive money back every year. That's because I pay at least $1,000 more than my taxes. Because, you know, I'm retired now. I pay these quarterly taxes that estimated income. And I always want to make sure that I don't have to pay at the end, so I get money back. You know, yes,
I don't disagree with that, Paul. I do that to a lesser and less extent
Sure.
because I don't want to be loaned at the same time. Why we're being taxed for money that we're going to get back at the end. You know, we're just giving this money to the government to use, and so I don't think that's my wife and I used to do that many years ago. We'd get back $8,000 or $10,000, and you know we've gradually got it closer to what you're talking about, maybe getting 1,000 or 2,000 back just to prevent from having to pay anything.
Yeah, what I'm very interested in is the companies that have their corporate tax. You know, they're incorporated in the Cayman Islands, so they pay no taxes whatsoever, and yet these companies make billions, and they don't pay taxes. They don't pay income taxes, and that has to stop.
Well, there is a proposal, which I don't think the Congress has dealt with yet, but it's called the universal tax. It's a minimum 15% tax on all international corporations that they have to pay no matter what, no matter where they're incorporated or where they're doing business or how the accountants figure out their profit. Is that something that you think the Congress, both houses, should take up? Because I know that
No,
that Biden's in favor of it. You don't?
no, I don't. I think
Why?
if you sell it in the United States, it's subject to taxation.
Well, this has nothing to do with they don't have to pay U.S. taxes because they're paying worldwide taxes. What they're essentially saying is they have to pay 15% of their profits minimum. Could be more in taxes.
Well, what is the normal corporate tax right now?
It depends on where you're doing business. In Sweden, it's going to be a hell of a lot higher than it is
in the United States. I'm asking.
I don't remember. Maybe somebody else remembers. They cut it under Trump. One of the first things that was passed under Trump, and I want to say 15 or 20%, but I don't know that.
I think it was the low 20s, but maybe 21, or might have been 20, but might have been 22 or something.
Okay, it was a cut from what it was before. The logic was the corporations could use the money to expand production, and in fact, they use the money to do other things which were to benefit the corporation, which, by the way, I don't have a moral objection to, because their responsibility is not to the United States. They're not U.S. citizens. They are responsible to the shareholders and to a lesser extent to their employees. And if they want to do something for the United States, more power to them. But they don't have to.
What I'm saying is what they buy and sell in the United States should be taxed.
And by the way, this minimum tax concept, as I understand it, has nothing to do with that. They would still have to pay taxes according to the U.S. rules, whatever they may be. but at the end of the day, they would be responsible for paying X percentage of their profits in taxes somewhere. That's my understanding of the rule. Now, I'm sure it's a hell of a lot more complicated than that, but at least there would be some taxation, that the corporation would pay some portion of its money.
Mhm.
Do you not believe at the same time they're going to just add that extra cost onto their whatever product or service they sell or produce? They're going to add it on to their cost of the product that the general consumer is going to have to pay.
Well, they're going to add it to the cost of the product, but whether the consumers pay it or not is a question of, are the consumers willing to pay it or not?
Oh, that's true.
I mean, look at the gas prices. Remember when they were over $5 in Burlington, in the Shell in the center of town? They were over $5, and people stopped buying gas.
Well, unless we
And
do something about drilling, it's going to be over $5 again before much longer.
it may be. And
It's over
by the way,
it's $4 around where I am right now.
actually, it just dropped. The same Shell station just dropped a dime in the last 2 days. It was 4.09. It's now 3.99. But
And
the
the
price,
diesel gas is almost going to $6 a gallon.
right? And I can
And that's
remember.
going to drive the price of inflation even higher.
Yes, I agree with you. And I don't understand why diesel is so high, because I remember, what was it, 20 years ago, Volkswagen and other companies were making diesel powered cars because the fuel was so much cheaper than regular gas. I don't know why suddenly it's gone the other way.
We'll put you in charge of researching that.
All right, fair enough.
Well,
By the way, payback
the
is a
reason
bitch.
is- The reason is they charge what they can charge.
Yes,
And as long as we have to buy it, that's what we pay. You know,
It- well,
it was a few years ago.
Yeah.
I was getting gas on 3A in Billerica for $1.39. Now,
mhm.
why is it $3.50, $3.90?
I
The
think the
world
station
rate price didn't go up that much.
Actually, it did, but I think the station you're talking about is 379. I went by there today.
Yeah.
Part of it is, what can they get? There's major portions of corporations that are involved in figuring out how to maximize their profit. And there are two considerations. What can I get for each unit? And how many units can I sell at a different price point?
Mhm.
Also based on what the competition is doing. And that's how they determine what the price should be. At some point, if it goes too low, they can't make a profit anymore. So they either raise the price or they go out of business.
I don't know, just as an example, it's on a different product line I just bring up. I don't know if any of you, so probably, I'm pretty sure probably not Colleen, but the other two of you, I'm on Eliquis, which is a blood thinner. And it's a relatively expensive medication. Now, are you on that, Bob or Paul?
No.
I've been lucky I am not on that.
Okay, I'm on that plus another blood thinner also. But anyways, as I say, it's usually it costs me about $147, $150 for a 1 month supply, approximately. I have a friend of mine who's 10 years older than I. He's 86, and he's just got put on Eliquis recently. But he's also the kind of person who's years ago started buying most of his drugs through Canada. Anyways, when Eliquis became a thing that he was told by his doctors he had to take, he checked into his source up in Canada, which was there are places in Canada that are fully approved by the Canadian government to get medications. So it's not a hokey rokey place. They told him up there that essentially the medication he can have it shipped from Canada, which is generally an Eliquis is made in Switzerland. That'll be minimum half the price what you pay in the United States. And he was told that they just made a generic for Eliquis. I asked my doctor less than a month ago, my new doctor since I moved, and he says, no, there's no generic for Eliquis. And I says, well, I was told there isn't a generic. And he says, no, there isn't. And so anyways, I talked to my friend some more and he gave me some information and there certainly is a generic. Now, I don't know if my doctor, it turns out what happened is that the Eliquis is made by Pfizer and Pfizer, the CDC determined recently that Eliquis can be made as a generic, and they gave the approval. And Pfizer sued the CDC. This is within the past year, and forced the government. The CDC was sued, and Eliquis is now in the United States until the year 2026 is under protection under that pricing that they have. And you can't buy a generic in the United States. You can buy it in Canada, or you can buy the regular Eliquis in Canada for a lesser price than half the price you can buy it in the States. And you can buy the generic for about a third the price. Mm-hmm. Pfizer, they told the fellow, my friend, that Pfizer has made billions and billions of dollars on this product, on Eliquis to date.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Yeah. Are you in favor of the new law that says that I
don't think that law goes into effect for like 3 more years.
Well, I thought it was next year, but you may be right. I don't remember when it goes into effect. That insulin is capped at $35.
I'm in favor. I don't know anything else about it. Unfortunately, I'm not on insulin at this point. So,
right.
But
and I'm not there either. And I'm very happy about that because my mother had diabetes. My grandmother. There's a family history.
But I'm sure Pfizer keeps their thumb on a lot of these politicians. We give all kinds of donations to these the Pfizer probably gives lots of donations to these politicians, and so they let them do these kind of things. That's my opinion.
Okay, well, how about another thing that came out of this Inflation Reduction Act was that Medicare could negotiate for price reductions on all kinds of drugs, which they were not allowed to do when the original Medicare was passed, in order to keep the drug companies from absolutely flooding money into the Congress to keep it from being passed at all. So for, what is it, 60 years almost, Medicare is the only major insurance program in the country, if not the world, that isn't allowed to negotiate. So in this new rule, this Inflation Reduction Act, they are allowed to do it. And I do know that several Republicans, I'm not saying all, but several Republicans were campaigning on the idea that they were going to get rid of portions.
I know you said Ron Johnson that he fully denies that.
Well, I sent you quotes.
I've heard him say that in person, not in person, but I've seen him say that. I was never supportive of what you imply he was.
Well, I sent you quotes on that because
that's quotes. I don't know where you got them from or whatever, but
okay. Well, how about the guy? He's a senator from Florida who put out a proposal for the Republicans should they win the Congress, and one of the proposals was he wanted to address at minimum every 5 years, some Republicans said every single year, to look at the costs and benefits of Medicare and Social Security, and where appropriate, change them every single year. Colleen, this is not an issue for you yet, but it will be at some point. Let me tell you, because I retired early before I could get on Medicare, and it made a huge difference when I turned 65. It was amazing how much money I had in my pocket. And I got better coverage. But
any program should be under review under a certain frequency, whether it's, I'm not sure every year, but fairly often. Every program should be under review.
how about Hartford annuity? If I don't remember if it was Hartford, I bought an annuity at some point, and I'm collecting a few pennies a month from that annuity. Should Hartford or Congress or somebody be able to go in and say, you know what, we did some calculations 50 years ago that were absolutely wrong, and Hartford Corporation needs that cash, so we're going to cut the money that you paid for, I paid for, because such circumstances have changed. I'd be a little pissed. And I hate to tell you, but Social Security is money I paid for. I put my cash, a portion of the taxes that Colleen was talking about, into that annuity. And when Scott is the senator from Florida, says we're going to look at it to see whether in fact this is appropriate now. Maybe we'll cut your rates, not because we don't have the money, but because we have better use for the money. The country has better use for the money. I would be a little
That's
pissed
a
off.
breach. That's such a breach of contract. I mean, like, because you expected something. You
Yes.
expected to have, in the way it was supposed to work is everybody that paid in would be covered by the people that were still working. And because they
Right.
were not, they didn't manage that money the way they were supposed to manage it. The funds are not there now for the young people, and with good reason. They're being skeptical about, I don't know if they're worried about it, but they should be worried about it because they're the ones that are funding the benefits from somebody else, but they're not going to receive the same benefits
Well,
that
they are, if
have gotten.
in the same way as part of the problem why there's an issue with Social Security and Medicare is people like me. I'm 78 years old. Statistically, I should have been dead a long time ago. But because of Social Security, because of Medicare and things like that, I've lived a lot longer. Paul, I know, is 78 as well. Chuck, I always thought you were in your 80s.
76.
You're
I'm
76. Oh, you're younger than me.
That's right.
Oh,
So you better. That's why I look up to you. That's why I look up to you.
Show some respect, yeah.
But the fact that these,
Respect my elders.
okay, that's fine. I'll take what I can get. The success of the programs is causing it to cost a little bit more. And oh, by the way, if this was a privately run program, the Hartford would in fact be charging you more for their services because people are living long. I have a tiny pension, and that tiny pension, it was based on an assumption that I probably would live to maybe 71, 72. So they're losing money on me. Hopefully they will be losing money on everybody, because that means that it was successful. We're getting what we paid for.
Well, things are going to have to be adjusted to take care of this growing problem, because it's not going to get better but on its own. So
Right.
There's going to have to be some adjustments in various ways. So
why not do what we've done in the past, which was raise the tax rate?
That
a
may
percent or
very,
two?
that may very well be one of the things.
Okay,
So that-
well, is that something that we'd like to see the Congress address?
Well,
Because
I
it-
don't, they should address it, but they should also address the way they handle the money. If they're not gonna, if they're just gonna keep on doing, like taking from the money that it's supposed to be set aside for something. And
But
using
what
it
they're
for-
doing is they're investing in treasuries. The safest investment in the world is US treasuries, at least as of this moment. If we default on our national debt, probably not so much. But at the moment, they're investing in US treasuries as opposed to investing in the stock market. I don't know about you, but every morning when I get up and every evening at just before dinner, I look at what's going on in the market, and it's amazing how little I eat. So, I mean, I don't want my retirement based on whims, on somebody throwing dice, almost literally throwing dice. I wanted.
Paul, is Paul get, I thought Paul wanted to say something. or
Okay, I'm
that-
sorry. I haven't been watching him. I apologize.
No, I mean, we've gone past, 3 or 4 or 5 different topics
Yeah.
that I wanted to talk about. And now I can't remember what it was that I wanted to say. But the stock market, the rise in the stock market is explained clearly by the growth in the money supply. And the money supply has grown enormously by the Fed just printing more money.
Right.
That's what the Fed does. It has a checkbook with nothing in it, and it gives billions away.
There's,
Banks.
do any of you know, in reference to a trial run that started this week with the Federal Reserve?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the New York Federal Reserve started this week a 12-week trial on how to make digital currency work.
Oh God.
Oh,
Oh, geez.
interesting timing.
It's been talked about from. I'm sorry.
Right after one of the digital currencies went to zero.
Yeah, and it's been talked about doing this for years, but it's in place right now as far as how best to implement this. So you might want to keep your ears and eyes open to see what kind of stuff that comes from the news media.
Wow.
I saw one source talk about it earlier today, who's talked about it often in the past. And I saw a small article, I think a couple of days ago, in the Wall Street Journal about it.
Interesting.
It's a Ponzi scheme. Digital currency is a Ponzi scheme.
The
And,
digital currency? I don't think so, Paul. All they're planning on doing is convert any dollar bills, $100 bills, whatever, convert it into on a digital format, I believe, on your telephone. So as you see, many people use their phones when they go into a store, especially the younger generation, and they'll all be there. The benefit to it benefits the government much, because all of your currency, every dollar that you have in the bank, in your pocket, wherever, the government will know what you have. And every time you spend a nickel, a dime, or $100 or whatever, they'll know what it went for.
Also, by the way, a whole bunch of people will no longer be employed.
That's correct. I mean, there will no longer be an underground market. To be
Forget
able
it.
to,
Market Basket. If you go up to Market Basket in Borica, what percentage of the employees are working with cash or credit transactions?
it's going to revolutionize things, and it's not only in this country; it's going on in other countries also.
Right, actually, Estonia is probably as close as any country to an all digital economy. The only reason I know that is my daughter did a documentary on it a number of years ago. But everybody uses a credit or a debit card.
I heard that in the United States, it's actually about between 30 and 40% of people use their credit card or digital already, especially the younger generation.
Well,
Anybody?
it depends on how much. For example, I'm unusual because I like getting points. I haven't have a Hilton card, but I like getting points which translate into free hotel stays should I ever actually go anywhere. But most people for small transactions are using cash.
I don't know if that's true in most people. I don't know.
Or just looking at people in the supermarket. Remember, I spend most of my life in supermarkets, so
Yeah.
I have a different view of the world.
Anyways, it's 9 o'clock, so I'm not sure we're going to get shut off here soon.
Yeah,
Probably pretty soon. Okay, did we get? I don't know that we really got too far